The rain hammered down on New York City, turning the streets into a maze of glistening puddles and hurried footsteps. Inside a sleek black sedan, Ethan Carter barely noticed the storm outside. His mind was consumed with last-minute details of a crucial business deal he was about to close in Los Angeles. As the CEO of one of the country's largest investment firms, every second of his time was meticulously planned. Compassion was a luxury he rarely indulged in. As he waited at a red light, his sharp blue eyes drifted toward the sidewalk. There, huddled beneath a dimly lit awning, was a woman clutching a small child to her chest. Her coat, soaked through, clung to her frail figure, and her arms, visibly trembling, were wrapped tightly around the child in a desperate attempt to keep her warm. A piece of worn cardboard lay at her feet, the uneven scrawl barely legible, "Please help. Need food and shelter." Ethan exhaled sharply and looked away. Not my problem. That was what his instincts told him. The city was filled with stories like this, and he had long taught himself to ignore them. Survival was about focus, not sentiment. But as the seconds dragged on, something in his chest tightened. He checked the rearview mirror and saw the woman, Sophia, adjusting her grip on the little girl, Lily, who had started to cry. The child's sobs were barely audible over the pounding rain, but they struck him harder than he cared to admit. The light turned green. Ethan's foot hovered over the gas pedal. "Drive away, Ethan. Keep going." Instead, he rolled down the window. "Get in," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. Sophia flinched, her hazel eyes filled with weariness. She had seen too much cruelty to accept kindness without suspicion. I can't," she stammered. "You can," Ethan interrupted. "I don't have all day. Just get in before you both freeze." Sophia hesitated for a beat, glancing down at Lily, who whimpered in her arms. The child's face was flushed from the cold, her tiny hands clutching at her mother's damp sweater. Finally, with a deep breath, Sophia opened the car door and slid into the seat, carefully positioning Lily on her lap. The door clicked shut. Warmth from the car's heated seats seeped into her frozen skin, and she exhaled shakily. Ethan adjusted the temperature higher and stole a quick glance at them in the rearview mirror. The woman looked exhausted, beyond exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her lips were slightly cracked from the biting wind. But even in her fragile state, there was a quiet strength about her. "You're lucky," he muttered as he pulled away from the curb. Sophia frowned. "Lucky?" "Yeah," Ethan said, eyes fixed on the road. "I don't usually stop." She didn't know what to say to that, so she simply whispered, "Thank you." Ethan didn't respond. He wasn't sure why he had done it. But as he drove through the rain-soaked streets, he knew one thing: this moment, this decision, had just altered the course of all their lives. The heavy iron gates of Ethan Carter's estate swung open, revealing a long, winding driveway lined with towering oak trees. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, but the night air remained crisp. As the sleek black sedan approached the house, Sophia Evans pressed her forehead against the cool glass, her breath fogging up the window. The mansion loomed ahead, a breathtaking structure of glass and stone, its massive floor-to-ceiling windows glowing softly in the dim light. Sophia tightened her grip on Lily, who had finally fallen asleep against her shoulder, her tiny hand clutching the fabric of her mother's coat. The warmth of the car had lulled her into much-needed rest, a luxury neither of them had enjoyed in far too long. Ethan pulled up to the front entrance and put the car in park. Without a word, he stepped out and moved to open the rear door. The moment the cold air hit her, Sophia shivered involuntarily. She hesitated before stepping out, her worn-out sneakers sinking into the smooth, dry pavement of the private driveway, a stark contrast to the wet sidewalks and freezing subway stations she had grown accustomed to. Ethan handed her a silver key, cool and smooth in her trembling fingers. "You'll stay here tonight," he said simply. Sophia's lips parted in surprise. I can't accept this," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "We don't belong here." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped dark hair. "It's just one night. No questions, no conditions. Take the key." She hesitated but eventually nodded, pressing the key tightly in her palm. It felt heavier than it should, not just a key to a house, but a key to something she had long forgotten: safety. Stepping inside, Sophia gasped. The foyer was larger than any apartment she had ever lived in. The ceiling soared at least 20 feet high, with a grand chandelier casting a warm golden glow over the polished marble floors. A wide staircase curved gracefully upward, leading to the second level, where dimmed hallway lights stretched endlessly. The scent of cedarwood and fresh linen lingered in the air, clean, refined, nothing like the damp, musty shelters she had been forced to endure. "You'll find everything you need upstairs," Ethan said, his voice clipped, almost businesslike. "There's a guest room, a bathroom, and a kitchen if you're hungry." Sophia turned to face him. "Why are you doing this?" For the first time that night, Ethan hesitated. His expression flickered with something unreadable before he finally muttered, "It doesn't matter. Just get some rest." Without waiting for a response, he turned on his heel and disappeared down the hallway, leaving Sophia standing in the middle of the vast, empty space. She took a slow breath, adjusting Lily in her arms before making her way up the grand staircase. Pushing open the first door she found, she stepped into a bedroom that looked like something out of a dream: a plush king-sized bed with crisp white sheets, a fireplace flickering in the corner, and a thick, inviting rug underfoot. Sophia carefully laid Lily down on the bed, brushing damp curls from her tiny face. As she stood back, watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in months, tears pricked the corners of her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. The warm glow of the fireplace flickered across the bedroom walls, casting soft shadows over the sleeping child. Lily's tiny chest rose and fell in peaceful rhythm, her small fingers clutching the edge of the plush blanket. Sophia Evans sat at the foot of the bed, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if trying to hold together the pieces of a life that had once been whole. She should have been asleep, her body ached with exhaustion, but memories had a way of creeping in during the quietest moments. The luxury surrounding her felt unreal, almost like stepping into a world she no longer belonged to. It reminded her of what she had lost, and what she had once dreamed of. There was a time when Sophia had everything mapped out. She had been a brilliant student, a young woman determined to make a difference. Growing up in a modest home in the suburbs of Chicago, she had worked tirelessly to earn a scholarship to one of the country's top medical schools. Her parents had been her biggest supporters, always encouraging her to reach for more, to never settle. Her mother, a retired nurse, would stay up late helping her review anatomy flashcards. Her father, a mechanic, would proudly tell his customers that his daughter was going to be a doctor one day. They had believed in her so fiercely that she had started to believe it too. And then, the accident happened. One late winter night, a drunk driver ran a red light. In an instant, both of her parents were gone. Sophia remembered the phone call, the hospital's sterile walls, the way the world had seemed to collapse in on itself. Grief doesn't just take away the people you love, it strips you of direction, of certainty, of the future you thought was guaranteed. Without her parents, Sophia had no safety net. Their modest savings vanished under the weight of funeral costs and unpaid bills. She tried to keep going, tried to push through the grief, but working 2 jobs while juggling medical school proved impossible. Exhaustion chipped away at her, and eventually, she was forced to drop out. It was during this time of vulnerability that she met Damien. He had seemed kind, understanding. The type of man who could lift some of the weight off her shoulders. He was charming, attentive, until he wasn't. Slowly, the warmth in his eyes turned to control. At first, it was little things, questioning her every decision, isolating her from friends, making her doubt herself. But then, it became worse. He convinced her to let him handle their finances, promising to help her get back on her feet. By the time she realized what he was doing, it was too late. He drained the last of her savings, leaving her with nothing. And when she confronted him, his words cut deeper than any knife. "You were nothing before me, and you'll be nothing after I'm gone." Then, he walked out. Sophia had never felt so alone. Pregnant, penniless, and without a support system, she found herself standing at the edge of a life she no longer recognized. Survival became her only goal. She worked any job she could find, cleaning houses, waiting tables, even sleeping in shelters when rent became impossible to afford. The city was unkind to people like her, but she refused to let it break her. And then, Lily was born. The moment she held her daughter in her arms, something inside her shifted. Lily was her purpose, her second chance. Every sacrifice, every cold night spent sleeping in bus stations, every rejection from landlords who didn't want to rent to a single mother, it was all worth it to keep her baby safe. Sophia had lost everything, but she had Lily. And for her, she would keep fighting. Now, as she sat in a room too beautiful for someone like her, the past felt heavier than ever. What was she doing here? How long before Ethan Carter realized she didn't belong in his world? She glanced at Lily, who stirred slightly in her sleep but remained peaceful. For tonight, they had a roof over their heads. For tonight, they were safe. That had to be enough. But deep down, she wondered, was this just another temporary reprieve, or had fate finally decided to give them a real chance? The first morning in Ethan Carter's mansion felt almost surreal to Sophia Evans. She woke to the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the large bedroom windows, the warmth of a real bed wrapped around her like a long-forgotten embrace. For the first time in months, she hadn't woken up to the ache of cold pavement beneath her or the gnawing anxiety of where they would sleep that night. Beside her, Lily stirred, stretching her tiny arms before blinking up at her mother with a sleepy smile. It was a look of innocence, one Sophia had worked tirelessly to protect despite their hardships. She had no illusions about staying here permanently. Ethan had made no promises. His offer had been simple, a place to stay for one night. But something about the way he had handed her the key, the way he had looked at Lily, told her there was more to him than his cold, businesslike exterior. Ethan had always prided himself on maintaining distance, from people, from emotions, from anything that could slow him down. Feelings were distractions, and distractions were dangerous. But that morning, as he stood at the top of the grand staircase, he heard something that made him pause. Laughter. Soft, delicate, and unmistakably joyful. He followed the sound toward the kitchen, where he found Sophia standing by the stove, carefully flipping pancakes in a pan. Lily sat on the counter, her little legs swinging, giggling as her mother shaped one of the pancakes into a heart. The sight was jarring against the sleek, modern kitchen. This was a home meant for efficiency, not warmth. Yet somehow, in less than 12 hours, Sophia and Lily had filled it with something different, something alive. Sophia turned abruptly, startled to see Ethan standing there. For a moment, there was an awkward silence. She began, setting down the spatula. "I hope you don't mind." Lily was hungry, and I figured since you let us stay. Ethan's gaze flickered to Lily, who was watching him curiously. Then, without thinking, he stepped forward and picked up a piece of pancake from the plate. He took a bite, nodding slightly. "It's good," he said. Sophia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Lily clapped her hands. "Mommy makes the best pancakes." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Best pancakes, huh?" Lily nodded, then with the confidence only a 4-year-old could have, reached out her small hand toward Ethan. "Do you want to sit with us?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. He had meetings to attend, emails to answer, business deals waiting for his approval. But instead of brushing her off, he found himself pulling out a chair. "Just for a minute," he muttered. Sophia watched, trying to understand this man who had given them shelter yet seemed so detached from the idea of family. He was powerful, successful, and undoubtedly intelligent, but beneath it all, was there something else? A loneliness he didn't acknowledge? As they ate, Ethan found himself listening to Lily's stories about her favorite books, how much she loved drawing, how she once saw a butterfly that was this big. She stretched her arms as wide as they could go. He had never been around children much. They were unpredictable, loud, and required patience, qualities he had never developed. Yet, somehow, Lily's innocence made him forget himself. Then, the conversation shifted. "Where's your daddy?" Ethan asked absent-mindedly, taking a sip of his coffee. The question hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Sophia's face went pale, and Lily looked down at her plate, suddenly uninterested in her food. Sophia cleared her throat, forcing a small smile. "It's just been us for a while," she said carefully. Ethan knew better than to push. But for the first time in a long time, he felt something unexpected, an unfamiliar sense of responsibility. That night, as Ethan worked late in his office, he found his mind wandering. He could still hear Lily's laughter, see the way Sophia had tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear as she cooked. A part of him wanted to shake off the feeling, this wasn't his life. He wasn't built for family, for emotions. Yet, as he walked past the guest room, he stopped. The door was slightly ajar, and through the dim light, he saw them. Sophia was sitting on the edge of the bed, stroking Lily's hair as she slept. The love in her expression was undeniable, a mother's devotion, unwavering and fierce. Ethan didn't enter. He didn't say a word. But as he turned away and walked back to his empty bedroom, he couldn't ignore the realization that, somehow, in ways he didn't yet understand, these two had already begun changing him. For the first time in years, Ethan Carter's mansion felt less like a house and more like a home. There was something different about coming downstairs in the morning and hearing the faint sounds of Lily's laughter echoing through the halls. The scent of fresh coffee, the warmth of an occupied kitchen, things he never thought he needed, yet now found himself expecting. Sophia Evans had changed the atmosphere of his home without even trying. She wasn't intrusive, nor did she ask for anything beyond the kindness he had already offered. But her presence, along with Lily's, had become a quiet comfort in his once sterile life. And that was exactly what Vanessa Sterling noticed the moment she walked through his front door unannounced. Vanessa had never been the type to take no for an answer. She had once been Ethan's closest companion, his business partner in more ways than one, and had always assumed she would be the one at his side, forever. But things had changed. Ethan had grown distant, his interest in her waning. Vanessa had suspected for weeks that something, or someone, was pulling him away. Now, standing in the middle of his grand foyer, she felt the shift immediately. The house wasn't cold and impersonal anymore. There were signs of life, a child's jacket draped over the couch, a small drawing pinned to the fridge, the soft hum of a lullaby playing from a nearby room. And then, she saw Sophia. The woman stepped out of the hallway, wearing one of Ethan's sweaters, her hair loosely tied back. She froze when she saw Vanessa, instantly aware of the hostility in the woman's gaze. Vanessa's perfectly manicured nails curled into her palm. So this was the woman who had taken her place. "You must be the help," Vanessa said, her tone saccharine, though her eyes burned with something else. Sophia stiffened but remained calm. "I'm Sophia," she said simply. "And what, exactly, are you doing here, Sophia?" Vanessa asked, stepping closer, inspecting her like a predator sizing up its prey. Before Sophia could respond, Ethan entered the room. Ethan didn't look surprised to see Vanessa. Annoyed, perhaps, but not surprised. He had been expecting this confrontation for a while now. "Vanessa," he greeted coolly. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa gave him a knowing smile, her red lips curling. "I should be asking you the same thing, darling. I dropped by for a visit and find a stranger living in your house." She let out a mock laugh. "That's a bit unlike you, isn't it?" Ethan shot a glance toward Sophia, who had gone rigid beside him. He exhaled. Sophia and her daughter needed help. "That's all." "That's all?" Vanessa echoed, tilting her head. "You let a complete stranger into your home, Ethan? A woman you know nothing about?" She crossed her arms, her voice dripping with calculated concern. "Are you sure she's not taking advantage of you?" Sophia's breath hitched. Ethan's jaw tensed. "That's not what this is." Vanessa smiled knowingly, stepping closer. "Then tell me, Ethan, do you even know who she really is? Have you looked into her past? Or are you just assuming she's the innocent victim she claims to be?" Sophia's hands clenched at her sides. She had spent years fighting against judgment, against assumptions made by people who had never lived a day in her shoes. And now, standing in Ethan's home, being questioned like a criminal, that same helpless anger bubbled up inside her. Ethan said nothing, but Sophia saw it, the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. And that was all it took. Sophia swallowed the lump in her throat. She had survived worse than this, she had walked away from worse. She would not beg for trust. She turned to Ethan. "If you're questioning me now, after everything, then maybe I shouldn't be here at all." Ethan's head snapped toward her, but she was already walking past him. Vanessa smirked, victorious. "Smart girl." Sophia didn't stop. She moved quickly, up the stairs, into the guest room, gathering Lily's things. She wouldn't fight to stay somewhere she wasn't truly wanted. Ethan appeared in the doorway. "Sophia, wait." She turned to him, her voice steady but filled with hurt. "I've spent too many years being treated like I don't belong. I won't do it again." She reached for Lily, cradling her against her chest. The child blinked sleepily, unaware of the tension in the air. "Sophia," Ethan tried again, but she shook her head. "Thank you for your kindness," she whispered. "But we'll be fine." And then, without another word, she walked past him, down the grand staircase, and out into the night. The mansion had never felt so empty. Ethan Carter sat in his office, the glow of the city lights flickering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A glass of whiskey rested on his desk, untouched, condensation gathering around its base. For the first time in years, silence unsettled him. Sophia and Lily were gone. He had let them walk away. The moment played over and over in his head, the look in Sophia's eyes, the quiet disappointment, the way she held Lily close as if shielding her from yet another disappointment. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't pleaded. She had simply left. And he had let her. Ethan had built his entire life on logic. Emotions were distractions. He had spent years perfecting the art of keeping people at a distance, ensuring no one ever got close enough to leave a mark. Yet somehow, Sophia and Lily had slipped past his defenses without him even realizing it. At first, they had been an unexpected intrusion, a stray mother and child seeking shelter for the night. But slowly, day by day, they had woven themselves into his life. The mansion no longer felt cold with them there. The laughter of a child had filled its empty halls. The smell of home-cooked meals had replaced the sterile scent of untouched spaces. He had convinced himself that he was merely helping them. Nothing more. But the moment they walked out the door, the ache in his chest told him otherwise. Ethan wasn't a man who made blind decisions. He needed facts, clarity. And so, he did what he did best: he investigated. Within hours, his private investigator had compiled everything on Sophia Evans. And what he found made Ethan's stomach twist with guilt. She wasn't a con artist. She wasn't a manipulator. She was a survivor. A woman who had once been a promising medical student, who had lost everything when her parents died in a tragic accident. A woman who had fought to keep her unborn child safe after being betrayed by a man who had taken advantage of her vulnerability. A mother who had sacrificed every comfort to ensure her daughter never went hungry. And then, there was Lily. A child who had known nothing but struggle until she had stepped foot into his home, until she had looked up at him with innocent eyes and called him her friend. Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. He had doubted this woman. He had let Vanessa's words poison his judgment. Ethan was not a man who hesitated when he wanted something. And right now, he wanted them back. Without another second of thought, he grabbed his keys, heading for the car. He needed to find them. Now. The city was vast, but he knew where she might be: the small shelter downtown, the one she had mentioned in passing. As he pulled up outside the rundown building, his chest tightened. He had driven past places like this 100 times before, never giving them a second thought. But now, it felt unbearable to think of Sophia and Lily sleeping here when they should have been home. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. Sophia was sitting on a small cot, Lily curled up beside her, fast asleep. The dim lighting made the exhaustion on her face even more apparent, but she still had that quiet strength, that unbreakable resilience. When she saw Ethan standing there, she froze. He had never seen uncertainty in her eyes before. But tonight, it was there. "Ethan?" she whispered, carefully standing. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to say. So, he simply told her the truth. "I was wrong," he admitted, his voice low, raw. "I should have trusted you. I should have fought for you instead of letting you walk away." Sophia's lips parted slightly, as if she wasn't sure whether to believe him. Ethan took a step closer, his gaze locking onto hers. He had never fought for anything outside of business. But this was different. "I don't just want to help you, Sophia," he said. "I want you to come home." His voice softened. "Both of you." Sophia hesitated, glancing down at Lily, who stirred slightly in her sleep. "I don't know if I can trust that, Ethan," she admitted. "I've had people make promises before, and they always break them." Ethan exhaled, then knelt down, leveling himself with her. "Then let me prove it," he said. "Not with words. With time." A long silence stretched between them. Then, Lily's sleepy voice broke it. "Mr. Ethan?" she murmured, rubbing her eyes. "You found us?" Ethan's heart clenched. He nodded, offering a small smile. "Yeah, kid. I found you." Lily reached her small arms toward him instinctively, and without hesitation, he scooped her up. Sophia watched, and something shifted in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment she had been waiting for. Ethan Carter had always believed that life was a series of transactions, measurable, calculated, and predictable. But standing in front of Sophia Evans, holding Lily in his arms, he realized that some things couldn't be measured. Some things had to be felt. The dimly lit shelter, with its peeling walls and rows of cots, felt stifling compared to the grand, empty mansion he had left behind. How had he let them end up here? The thought weighed on him heavily. Sophia stood before him, arms crossed over her chest, her expression unreadable. There was no anger in her eyes, no resentment, only caution, a quiet protectiveness that came from years of disappointment. Ethan tightened his hold on Lily, who had nestled against his shoulder, her small body warm and trusting. How had he become someone she trusted, yet failed the one person who needed it most? He took a deep breath. "I messed up, Sophia." Sophia didn't say anything, but she didn't walk away either. That was enough for him to keep going. "I let someone else's words cloud my judgment," he admitted. "I let my own fears get in the way. And I hurt you. I know I can't take that back, but..." He hesitated, then met her gaze with quiet conviction. "I don't want to make the same mistake again." Sophia exhaled softly, her fingers brushing Lily's hair absent-mindedly. "And what mistake was that, Ethan?" He swallowed. "Letting you go." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Sophia had spent most of her adult life waiting for the other shoe to drop. For people to leave. For promises to break. It had happened with Damien, with friends who had disappeared when life got hard, with strangers who had offered kindness only to turn their backs when it became inconvenient. And now, here was Ethan, standing in a place he had no reason to be, offering something she had never dared to hope for. "I don't need charity, Ethan," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "If you're doing this out of guilt..." "This isn't guilt," he interrupted, stepping closer. "This is me realizing that I need you. Both of you." Sophia's breath hitched. She had spent years carrying the weight of survival alone, never expecting anyone to share the burden. And now, this man, this guarded, reserved man, was standing before her, asking for a chance to be part of their lives. "But what happens when things get hard?" she asked, searching his face. "What happens when you start doubting me again?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "Then we work through it. Together." She studied him for a long moment, looking for any sign of hesitation, any cracks in his resolve. But there were none. Then, a small voice piped up between them. "Mommy?" Lily blinked up at her mother, her tiny hands still gripping Ethan's shirt. "Can we go home now?" Sophia's heart clenched. Home. The word meant something different now. She looked at Ethan again, and this time, she saw something she hadn't seen before, not just sincerity, but certainty. A promise that, this time, he wouldn't let them down. The drive back to the mansion was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, glancing back at Lily, who had already dozed off in the back. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, but his hand rested on the gear shift, close enough that Sophia could feel the warmth of it. A silent offering. When they pulled up to the house, Sophia hesitated for only a moment before stepping out. This wasn't just a house anymore. This was a place where she had felt safe. A place where Lily had laughed. Ethan walked beside her, opening the front door and stepping aside so she could enter first. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. Lily, still half asleep, wrapped her arms around Ethan's neck as he carried her upstairs. "You're not gonna leave again, right?" she murmured drowsily. Ethan's chest tightened. He kissed the top of her head, whispering, "Not a chance, kid." Sophia watched them from the hallway, a lump forming in her throat. She had spent so long believing she had to do everything on her own. But maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to anymore. As Ethan tucked Lily into bed, he turned back to Sophia. "Stay," he said softly. "Not just for the night. For good." Sophia took a deep breath. And then, for the first time in a long time, she let herself say yes. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet adjustments. Ethan learned how to make breakfast without burning the toast. Sophia learned how to accept help without feeling like a burden. And Lily thrived. Ethan had once thought success meant power, control, financial security. But one night, as Lily ran into his arms, giggling, and Sophia stood nearby, watching with a soft smile, he realized this was the only success that had ever really mattered. And when Lily called him daddy for the first time, he knew he had finally found where he belonged.